All right, aloha everyone. My name is Nicholas Bongcaron from Mental Health America of Hawaii. Welcome to Keeping a Good Game, a presentation on developing healthy online habits, tackling the stigma behind technology use, and learning how to cope with gaming/social media addiction. So before we begin, I want to go over some objectives that'll be covered throughout this presentation. Number one, the history, how technology quickly became normalized in the early 2000s as it became more available to the average consumer. Number two, acknowledge cyberbullying and online culture and how it connects with our mental and social well-being. Number three, technology habits that impact our mental health both negatively and positively. And lastly, emphasize the use of self-care when we go online. While this program is informational, I encourage participation. So I welcome everyone to interact in the chat to ask questions or share thoughts about the topics covered. Cameras are also encouraged but not required, but I should also point out that this presentation is being recorded. So contrary to our parents' belief, there are benefits to gaming. Video games can be stimulating and immersive. Also, games improved with technology, and technological advancements like virtual reality and AI are revolutionizing how we play. There's also a competitive aspect. Some games have a ranking system to tell us where we stand compared to other competitive players. For example, in League of Legends, there's Iron, Bronze, Silver, Gold, all the way up to Challenger, which consists of the top 0.02% of the competitive population. Games also require teamwork. Team-oriented games can be fun working with others to gain an advantage and win. There's also a challenging aspect. Video games aren't physically taxing, which means that we use more of our brain power than our bodies. Solving puzzles, learning mechanics, and finding things out about a game keeps things fresh and fun. Developing habits. Long-term games that take a lot of time and investment help build habits and give a sense of productivity. And lastly, it could be used as a form of self-care or a coping mechanism. Some games don't take a lot of brain power to be good at. After a long day of work or school, this could be just what we need to wind down and relax. Sharing media. The internet wasn't entirely mainstream until the early 2000s. The term viral is more commonly known as something that got really popular on the internet. Nowadays, the average viral video gets like 3 to 5 million views within a couple of days, at least on TikTok and YouTube, thanks to their crazy algorithm. And the internet revolutionized social interaction. Nowadays, it's so easy for people to connect with family across the globe and instantly through the internet. With this new technology becoming more widely used, big corporations capitalized off of our engagement and reach with the use of advertisements. This led the economy to move towards the internet and video games. Esports became considered the same intensity level of physical sports, gaining notable audiences at the high school, collegiate, and professional levels. Shameless plug to my alumni. Last year, Esports was awarded the Best Collegiate Esports Program of the Year by the Esports Awards. Hawaii is very community-driven, making sure friends, family, and people can gather and enjoy their time together. Esports tournaments could be held either locally or online. Also, organizations like SKT T1 and TSM that manage professional teams are always looking for talent. On Oahu, there's gaming lounges that offer free play on computers and consoles, giving a chance for people who do not have access to a computer at home to play their favorite game. With past generations, interesting careers consisted of astronauts, doctors, or celebrities. On top of that, today's youth are interested in pursuing a career in content creation, streaming, or competitive gaming. Thanks to local and state funding, Secondary schools can have their own esports teams or arenas so their teams can practice as an extracurricular activity. With improved availability of technology, young talent was able to show off their strengths in the competitive scene. Some honorable mentions are General Sniper and Time Abuser, who reached the top 0.5% in League of Legends while still in high school. If I remember correctly, I know Time Abuser personally, and he's graduating high school in 2024. For people who were unable to attend big tournaments like the picture on the right, streaming platforms like Twitch and YouTube broadcasted them live for people at home to watch. And the picture on the right was taken last year, the biggest League of Legends tournament of 2022, LCS Worlds. And additionally, there were at least 5 million viewers online. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Alok Kanodia, also known as Dr. K. He founded a program as a clinical physician that deep dives into the mental health aspect of gaming, social media, and content. Healthy Gamer Gigi. He's talked with social media influencers and internet celebrities and talks them through their areas of hardship and struggle. During the month of May, he worked with NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, to promote Mental Health Month. Since the internet and video games are still relatively new, only recently has there been clinical studies on gamers. There's also difficulty and barriers to study youth as parental consent is required.
If you're good at a video game, people will look at you and will say, wow, that is so amazing. You must work really hard to be good at the video game. It looks so effortful. But when you're good at a video game, you actually don't expend a whole lot of effort. It's actually easy for you, right? But the question is, why is it easy for you? Because you understand. You understand the mechanics of the game. You understand the meta of the game. The more that you understand, the more easy things become.
So thanks to YouTube Shorts and our shortening attention span, he's created this education to short form content that's easy to digest. And the takeaway from the video is that I'd like to connect the meaning of being good at something from school and sports to video games. Gaming is in its own element in terms of skill, and it's still a very new concept. Michael Jordan would practice basketball for hours to understand the sport. That's the same aspect for people who commit their full time to studying a game. But on the safer side, I'd like to acknowledge that school and sports are a safer career path compared to online content. And we have a question in the chat. How much time does it take someone to become such an expert as you just mentioned? I'd say it depends. If they're able to play for long periods of time, of course, they'll gain experience and knowledge throughout that time they're playing. But generally, an expert is considered to be at the top 1% of the ranking ladder, I guess. The sources of stress that come from gaming don't stray too far off from other extracurricular activities such as sports and music. Those who set goals for themselves in a game may feel disappointment if they're not as good as they want to be, especially when comparing themselves to others and their rank. Much like extracurriculars, people who game have to take into account that they have responsibilities first, and it could be hard to juggle everything. Also, the term "don't talk to strangers online" doesn't really get used that much anymore. And parents are fearful of this idea. We're now able to play video games with people all around the world. However, people are more comfortable speaking their mind in the safety of their own homes, meaning there is a possibility of encountering toxic behavior and discrimination online. Now, these are all common for hardworking youth looking towards their future. So here are some ways to answer these three things. Managing our stress. One way to answer underperformance is a change in mindset. There's always the opportunity to do better. For responsibilities like chores, work, school, and relationships, I advise prioritizing those first, not necessarily to get them out of the way in our gaming session, but to prioritize things that can't be put on pause. And for those struggling and thinking that video games and social media are a waste of time, think about it this way. If you're having fun, laughing, and spending time with people, it's not a waste of time. Instead, it's good memories to look back on. I still remember the summers when I was younger. My friends and I would play Minecraft for like 10 hours a day. And I really do miss those days. Uh, I reminisce most of the time because we're all old now. But yeah, toxicity is also prevalent in online communities. This is seen everywhere, considering we are talking increasingly big, the increasingly big reach of the internet. And the best way to prevent toxic behavior is to distance ourselves and prioritize safety. Online communication is able to be muted and reported, but in some cases, disconnection is necessary. It's due to the option of muting people that brings me to my next topic. Disinhibited forms of communication are those that strip away our humanity in ways we typically interact with each other. Text, chat, and email are all forms of disinhibited communication. I mean, how crazy would it be if we're in a real life conversation with someone and I'm just kidding, I muted my mic. This article, The Impact of Technology on Socialization and Communication Skills by Doug Fodman, was published before the pandemic impacted our population. But the message still stands. I mean, it was followed throughout the pandemic. When we transitioned to online learning, the only interactions we had with our classmates were in a chat room or through Zoom. After going through online learning, youth are more responsive online and through technology and social media. Another part of this article shows that it was much easier for a middle schooler to message their crush or friend through social media than to actually approach them at school. So I'd like to leave it up to the chat for sharing their thoughts on this. What do you think that does for social interaction during critical developmental stages like middle school and adolescence? I know growing up, I could relate to this one. There's definitely a time where I felt more comfortable direct messaging someone instead of approaching them at school. Next, I'm going to address a new problem that parents are facing: online addiction. There's a lot of blame to be thrown around regarding this, such as bad parenting, online school, games being too good. But I think we can all come together after watching this next video.
I'm not the one with the problem. My son is the one with the problem. And we say, well, we beg to differ. We've done 5 or 6 research studies on this. And what we discovered is that if your son is having trouble with technology, you're probably the one who needs to learn particular skills. And this is the unfortunate truth, is that parents are on the front line. You can't expect your 15-year-old to regulate their video game addiction. You can't expect the game developer or the government or even pediatricians or teachers to solve the problem. And so what we've really discovered is that parents need new skills that they didn't need before. Because if you think about how do we learn how to be parents, we learn what our parents used with us. Well, when our parents were raising us, they didn't have to deal with technology addiction. This is a new thing. And what we're really discovering is that parents do need to learn a new set of skills to be effective in today's modern day and age.
So I'm seeing your submissions in the chat. Thank you, by the way. And I agree with all of them, especially with masks. I'm not gonna take a stance in active or anti-mask, but being able to seeing someone's mouth and facial expressions goes to a deeper level when it comes to interaction. And going back on topic, the internet is still new, and parents didn't have the experience to regulate online use because it didn't exist in their time. And before I dive into the skills required to help youth with online addiction, I'd like to address the definition of it first. Youth that are considered to be addicted to the internet or a device may be considered as the kids who are always on their phone, also known as iPad kids because of all the fun and interactive games and videos on a big screen. Companies also capitalize off people engaged with their content, and they don't discriminate. There isn't a lot of regulation on the content kids see. YouTube has YouTube Kids, but it's up to the parents to set that rule. This becomes a problem when parents are unaware of how to operate a device, which is pretty common. And with programmers and developers getting better at their job, games are easier to get into, they're flashier, and they're easier to understand. So there's a lot of different ways to approach a youth if they're struggling with their technology use. But I'd like to go over a healthy way to tackle this. I'd also like to note that it's more effective to reach out to them in between games rather than during. With games being so immersive nowadays, it's very hard to multitask. It's okay to ask them if they're done with the game, or if they're done with the game, or if you could talk to them after the game is done. So to the parents navigating with youth that have a gaming/social media addiction, first, address your concern. Tell them that you notice that they've been playing for a long period of time. And also understand them. Educate them on what addiction is, because most of the time they may be unaware that they're addicted. And what they do is fun and interactive until you notice that it's not. You also want them to be on your team instead of against you. It's good to set healthy boundaries without resistance and restriction so they can be on your team. So let's practice that. Here's a completely made up scenario that could be very real. I'm going to paste it in the chat, but I'll also read it. So as a parent, you notice that your child has been playing Minecraft for 5 hours, mouth open, eyes bloodshot, and it doesn't seem like they're having fun anymore. How do we navigate that? A good question to ask, or I'll leave it up to chat, but I'll also go through my thought process. I don't have kids yet, but this is a good practice. So I would ask them, hey, you've been playing video games all day. Do you want to do something with me? Just to get their mind off of it. It's also good to avoid commenting on their appearance, getting angry or disappointed, and actively turning the computer off. And also ask them if they think that they're addicted to the game. As mentioned before, they're often unaware of it. And it's also good to set boundaries. Say you can play until sunset, but only until an hour before bedtime. And this is a good learning opportunity for them to educate that screen time may affect sleep hygiene. Next, Dr. K is going to explain a part of youth's dependence on technology.
Games have become a way to socialize. So what a lot of parents don't recognize is that when you restrict the game, you are also taking away your child's social support network. And so a lot of the resistance that kids will send their parents' way is because they're actually getting many psychological needs met by the video game. And imagine if I were to tell you, hey, like for the next 2 weeks, you're not allowed to see a single person that you like, right? That's what parents don't realize what they're really taking away from the kids.
So when we get attached to things to the point of addiction, it's very hard for us to abruptly stop. Much like it much like it is for people suffering from alcoholism to stop drinking alcohol. It becomes dangerous when the thing we become attached to also fulfills our social needs. Like this one time, my parents grounded me from my computer. Like, yeah, I'm fine with giving up my computer for the next week, but I also made plans to play with a friend on Sunday or Saturday. Can I get on the game to tell them I can't make it? And then my parents saw this as an excuse to play again, and they responded with no. Well, now I feel like a bad friend. And before I dive into the skills required to help youth with online addiction, I'd like to address the definition of it first. The term chronically online. Uh, this describes someone who is always on the internet and their entire existence revolves around being online. And this was common for people during lockdown, as the only social interaction that was considered safe was within the safety of our own homes and online. Online platforms such as Twitch, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube peaked in engagement during this time. And unfortunately, this led to an increased prevalence of online addiction. Also, in extreme cases, this consumed the majority of a youth's day, and the term chronically online became a widely used term. Cyberbullying. Our organization goes to schools and workplaces to promote mental well-being and suicide prevention awareness. We also go over the connection between bullying and mental health. Bullying can be defined as unwanted aggressive behavior, and that there is a power imbalance between two or more parties, and that this behavior is repeated or has potential to be repeated. Cyberbullying is a type of bullying that happens through the use of technology and the internet, both of which are relatively new and always evolving. And that brings me to my next topic. The answer to cyberbullying is hard to find, mostly because it's unregulated and unmonitored due to private chats, lobbies, and direct messages. It's also very easy to see hate, also express empathy, and just scroll past it and go on about our day. It's a very weird concept to grasp, but think about social media as a tissue box. You grab something, use it somehow, and throw it out. There's also a fine line between friendly banter and cyberbullying. For example, taunting someone and encouraging them to play better versus attacking their personal character and making them feel bad about themselves, objectively making them play worse. Next, we'll go over the current state of online culture. Online culture is unmonitored and unregulated, as stated before. And on the topic of virality, some believe that any engagement is good engagement. They spread hate and controversial values to spark a conversation that's unwanted by many. This is seen all over social media. People doing or saying questionable/controversial things to gain attention. This created a culture where social media influencers encourage their community in a harmful or toxic way. In multiplayer games like Valorant, CSGO, or League of Legends, it's not uncommon for a random player to play differently after finding out they're playing with someone different. I have an example here. Jason R. or Jason Ruchelski. In Valorant, there are pre-game lobbies that give players a chance to strategize or introduce each other through the use of voice chat. On stream, on Twitch, Jason R. was seen quitting the game after finding out one of his teammates was a woman, saying he doesn't want to play with women because he has to respect his relationship with his wife. This behavior gained bad attention because these lobbies are randomly selected and it was out of that person's power. A teammate's gender should not determine the result of the game. And the take-home message for you is that people go to gaming or social media as a way to escape from the stress of the real life, or of the real world, and feel welcomed into communities they find interest in. Isolation and ostracization is a risk factor for depression, anxiety, and PTSD. We should welcome everyone into communities with our common interests. Next, I'd like to explore what a healthy community and relationship looks like online. By doing that, I'll connect to an aspect that enhances the experience of video games, supporting characters. Most games have characters or aspects that improve gameplay. Supporting characters help others in ways that other characters lack. An example of this could include ease of access to certain things, improving quality of life, or powering us up. As people, we can do this too, helping people out if they're curious about something, teaching them healthy habits, and encouraging us to do better. Generally, supports focus on providing resources, creating opportunities for others to impact the game, and healing or shielding. In a cooperative video game, it's a lot more than dealing damage and scoring points, but also allowing other players to do all of those things given the opportunities we create as supporting characters. And lastly, a good supporting character brings out the best in their team. I also have an activity. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you see characters. You can also list characters that are not listed here, but I encourage you all to name at least one character that is a supporting character and give an example of what they do. I'll give you guys a few minutes for that. Yes, these characters are pulled from games I know at least surface level, so I may have missed some. No worries if you don't know what these characters are. Oh. So next, I'd like to go over some unhealthy habits that gamers do that can impact their relationships and mental health. The term can end on a loss. This is part of the reason why gamers typically stay up late. If we're satisfied with our performance, our competitive spirit won't let us stop. And unfortunately, this is early signs of addiction and burnout. And there's a reason why I put this at the top. It's mostly for me. Also, second, blaming/flaming teammates. This is toxic behavior because it puts the people on our team playing with us down. And this could lead them to either play worse or stop playing with us overall. And lastly, backseat gaming. It's similar to backseat driving when teammates micromanage us during the game. It's especially worse when that person is also playing on our team, when their focus should be playing their part. I'm going to go over a response to the unhealthy behaviors we went over in the last slide. Being tilted. The feeling after a long string of minor inconveniences, resulting in impulsive decisions, irritability, and lack of motivation. If I had to relate this to a real-world situation, I'd say this is similar to the feeling of commuting to one of our jobs. So imagine this. We oversleep, miss our alarm, forget breakfast, and hit every red light on the way to work. Then that one coworker, you know what I'm talking about, notices that we're late, tired, and he goes, "Hey, you look tired. Did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed this morning?" Sorry to anyone that may have unlocked a memory similar to that. But in terms of gaming, there's also the picture on the right. This person, I'm not going to say who, played 10 games of League of Legends and lost every single one. Now, the average game of League is around 25 to 30 minutes, meaning this person lost for about 5 hours consecutively. Uh, and during this time, they're thinking this is a waste of time. I just wasted the last 5 hours of my life. And the end result of this, or the end result of being tilted, is usually burnout. And as I said before, the feeling of wasted time. Dr. K is gonna show off again.
So a healthy gamer, what's a healthy use of games or tech?
It's a great question. So when we think about addiction, what we think of as addiction is something that impairs your function. It impacts your academic life, your professional life, your physical health, your relationships, your mental health.
Right.
So what I consider healthy technology use is technology use that doesn't hurt you. It's the ability to actually enjoy the technology that you use.
Right.
And what we sort of see is that the first half hour or hour that you play a video game, it's actually fun. But by hour 2, by hour 3, by hour 4, the enjoyment goes down. And that's when we fall into an addiction. We're using the thing, but we're not even having fun. So what we try to encourage is for people to understand, okay, how much enjoyment are you having from the technology? Do you want to take a couple of pictures? Absolutely. But what you want to remember is how much you enjoyed looking at that work of art, how much you enjoyed being there, how much you enjoyed being with those people. It's to evoke a memory, not to replace it.
So when we get tilted, it's not necessarily fun. It feels like we're still playing good, but we're also still losing. That's usually a good time in our gaming session to cut our losses short and take a break. And however, unhealthy behaviors can be fixed over time. And this is to give reassurance to both gamers and parents of gamers. With a good mindset, we could improve our gaming habits and have more fun than not. First, have the mindset of knowing that everyone is doing their version of the right thing. I learned this when watching a coaching session from former professional Afromu, and he emphasized that you could do everything right and still lose the game, simply because everyone has that mindset. And it's a matter of everyone getting on the same page to really shine as a team. Second, respecting boundaries. A serious player may not know a lot, or a serious player may know a lot more than a casual player, and that's okay. Differences in skills should be respected, not pointed out and laughed at. And also encouragement. Instead of belittling teammates, it's better to applaud their good plays. This positive feedback would improve their own gameplay and makes them want to play better more often. So I have another activity for the audience. What do you do for self-care? It doesn't have to be specific to in between games or not, but what do you do to wind down after a day of work or get ready for something big? I'd like to welcome everyone to share their experiences. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Ms. Tisa. Nice. So during lockdown, I journaled a lot. This helped me set goals, improve my self-awareness, and to teach myself how to get better at games. I was able to reach master tier in teamfight tactics, which is the top 0.5%. And this was through constantly analyzing my playstyle and recording it in my journal. Very valid responses from the chat. Nice, Tracy, good job. Thank you, Jerry. So for those who had trouble knowing what's considered self-care, here are some tips. Everyone has their own preference of self-care. So I'm going to go over some underrated forms that gamers can use. Now, I'd like to preface by saying that this is not meant to target any population in particular. This is purely satire. These tips are often overlooked, though, and can be done more often as a way to look out for our well-being. Number 1, hygiene. It's a common stereotype to hear that gamers don't shower or look after their appearance due to the fact that they're up all night playing video games. So much so that they don't put aside for their well-being or hygiene. Good hygiene improves mental health by improving self-image, gives a sense of resetting, and improved energy. And examples of this could be brushing teeth twice a day, washing hands over going to the bathroom, and doing laundry often. Now I'd like to introduce the 3S reset rule. Well, 3S reset practice, I guess. And this is very easy for gamers to do at home, but it could also be applied to school or the office. So the first S, go to the bathroom. Next, shower. And lastly, shave. Not exclusively in that order, but it's a good way of keeping good hygiene and taking a break from that screen time. Next, I'd like to point out a streamer that doesn't necessarily follow this rule, but since he's so successful, it works for him. Asmongold is a full-time streamer and has been for the past decade. He's very successful and prides himself on living off of the bare minimum. By spending less on laundry, water, and other utilities, he can stream for 10 plus hours a day and support the people he lives with. He's mostly known for portraying the hardcore gamer lifestyle that normally would be unhealthy to an average adult. I'll show you a clip from his stream late last year.
Yeah, but you're still showering, like you're getting all the
Every
sweat and the
day.
filth.
Do people shower every day? Like, how many of you guys actually shower every day?
He's interacting with the chat here.
That's crazy. Here, you guys want to see something funny? I'll be right back. So, this is a shirt that I wore for a month. And if you can see the colors and how different they are, the lighting does not do it justice. It actually does not do it justice at all. This is 1 month. It smells fine, basically. Yeah, it's not white anymore, it's gray. This is a gray shirt now. I'll probably wear this later.
So I'd like to emphasize that Asmongold has an average of 60,000 viewers every day he streams. And translate that to ad revenue and Twitch subscriptions, he makes a living off of his streaming career. And this safely supports his well-being. However, this behavior would equate as a warning sign for either addiction or depression for adults. As a side note, Asmongold recently worked with Dr. K and announced that he does practice mindfulness and is aware of his lifestyle, but doesn't necessarily see a problem with it or doesn't need it to get better because it works for him and supports him. Number 2, clean your desk and your desktop. So the streamer I mentioned before, the top picture is his desk or streaming setup. Another question for the chat. How would having a workspace like this make you feel? For example, if you need to write something down and there's a lot of stuff in the way of your desk. Anxious, that's really good. I can relate. Just looking at this desk makes me anxious. And this also works in a digital sense as well. I'm looking at the staff group chat now, and our boss gave us a reminder to clear our desktops. So think about that time we were in school doing a research paper, and then we lose that one crucial resource that we were going to use for our paper in the hundreds of tabs on our computer. What I'm trying to say here is that people have different states of workflow. But for some people, it may be easier to have less distractions, especially on our computers. And lastly, touch grass. Uh, the stereotype here is that gamers don't go outside. And that's mostly due to the reason that games are incredibly immersive nowadays. It's very easy to wake up, play a good game, and before we know it, it's sunset. And that's also true, Miss Tiza. I don't know. I think there's probably some residue in those other ones. By going outside, we practice mindfulness. This could be by taking a walk, admiring the view of the sunset or sunrise if you wake up early, or meet up with friends. By appreciating the real world, it keeps us connected to nature, our relationships, and our minds. So as an ending note, here are the games I enjoy playing. My most played game this year is probably Pokemon Go. I made it a habit that as soon as I clock out of my full-time job, this one, I head straight to the mall and walk around catching Pokemon. I don't even buy anything. Just because Pokemon Go is a location-based game that's on your phone, and there's a lot of resources at the mall. And for the game I'm best at, I mentioned before that I made Master Tier in Teamfight Tactics. And I've been playing that game since its release in 2019. I think it celebrated its 4-year birthday just recently. And I'm considered a veteran. Yeah. If anyone else plays any video games, feel free to drop it in the chat. And see who else plays the same game as you, or spark a conversation. So this is the end of the presentation. Oh wait, are there competitive games where it is goal oriented? Yes. And off the top of my head, I'll drop it in the chat. There's Overcooked, which is fun to play with a group of friends. It's multiple controllers on one console, so you can play it either online or at home. And you're basically trying to run a restaurant or run a kitchen, and customers put in an order that you have to fill. And it gets pretty chaotic, especially with being the name saying that it overcooked. You have to make sure you don't overcook your food. And it's very cooperative. Like there's different tasks that you're given, and it takes teamwork to fully be good at the game. Also, you can reach us at mentalhealthhawaii.org. We're everywhere on mainstream social media, such as Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. And for any other further questions after this presentation, feel free to email us at prevention@mentalhealthhawaii.com. Mahalo nui loa, mai kako. Have a good Aloha Friday. Oh, Somika Farm. I like that one. I saw gameplay. I don't think I have it on my computer right now.